welcome to the Saving with Steve show, where we talk about the ins and outs of money, pretty much everything on the sun that relates to you having a happy or healthy relationship with money. My name is Steve Sexton. I do want to thank you for joining us today, sharing us with your friends and families. But today we have something very special, okay? Our viewers, our listeners are growing more and more concerned about the tariffs, the impact on everyday living, with interest rates remaining high, the impact on debt. You know what? Where people are getting financially overwhelmed. And you know what? Don't worry. We have Howard Dvorkin here. He's a CPA. He's the founder and chairman of Debt.com, personal financial strategist, author for the Financial Literacy Advocate. Howard, you know what? He's helped more than 10 million Americans break free from debt. He's featured on Forbes, CNBC, NPR, New York Times. He's also appeared as a financial expert, both locally or nationally. And he's been on World News Tonight, The Early Show. He's an author of 2 books. One's Power Up, Take Charge of Your Financial Destiny, which provides consumers with detailed tools that they can use and that they need to live debt-free and regain their financial freedom. He's also got another one, if I love this topic, it's called Credit Hell, How to Dig Out of Debt. Details on how to rise from the debt inferno. You just want to check out those books. He's also a member of the Forbes Council and Kiplinger's Advisory Committee. He's here to walk us through it. So, Howard, thanks for joining us today. We appreciate you being here.
Thanks so much for having me, Steve.
So, you know, I'm always interested in what got you involved with debt. I mean, you're a CPA.
I am a CPA. Never claimed I was a very good CPA, but I am a CPA. Now, actually, I was pretty good at it. I was practicing in Washington, D.C., and I turned around, and this is going back to the late 80s, I was helping my clients get out of all these bank debts that were being called because of the RTC days, Resolution Trust Corporation, which all the banks were going broke and the loans were being called. And I started to negotiate. And I said, you know, what would happen? What happens to people that don't have access to a CPA? And I didn't work on a client with a net worth less than $10 million. I was with the largest national firm in the country, and I was doing sophisticated stuff. And I started to do some research, and I said, the people that really are impacted by this don't have access to professional help. So I sat down at my kitchen table where all great businesses are started. And in 1993, I opened up the doors of what was then a company which changed its name, but it became Consolidated Credit Counseling. And I turned around and built this company from my kitchen table. And all of a sudden, I recognized that there's a lot of other things that people need, not only help with their credit cards, but help with their mortgages, help with their taxes. So we started to do more and more, and that became Debt.com. And now, for 40% of the people that reach out to us at Debt.com, we can help them get out of debt, whatever your debt is. And I've been doing this, and collectively between Consolidated Credit and Debt.com, we've actually helped 13 million people get out of debt. And that's a lot of folks. That is a lot of folks. I know 10 million for one, 3 million for the other. And I'm an accountant and a pretty good math guy, and that's 13 million. But the reality is this: no matter what your financial situation, whether you're young, you're old, you're retired, you're working, debt is something people don't understand, and they need a better idea of how to get out and chart a pathway out of debt rather than doing those minimum payments to their creditors every month. And certainly your listenership probably has grandkids or kids, and they may be in trouble, and maybe you can give them some words of advice on how to get out of debt rather than a lecture. You know, maybe I show them a way to get out of debt rather than lecture them, hey, you shouldn't be in debt, why'd you get in debt? Or frankly, writing them a check, how to get them out of debt. That doesn't help. That doesn't teach them a lesson. What does teach them a lesson is show them how to get out of debt. That old adage, you can teach a man or teach a man how to fish, well, what is it? You could go and give a fish to a man to feed his family for a day. But if you teach him how to fish, you could feed his family for a lifetime. Same thing.
Mhm.
You need to be able to teach people how to get out of debt. And frankly, on debt.com, we have a tremendous amount of information on how to get out of debt. If you're in a certain situation, how to avoid getting into it. If you're in it, it'll teach you how to get out of it. And certainly there's also a recovery so you don't get back into debt. And you never want to experience that. Once you're in it and you're having to deal with somebody like me, although I'm somewhat of a nice guy, I'm sure you don't want to stay pen pals with me for the rest of your life. So we're going to teach you how to get out of debt and stay out of debt.
Okay, so let's just start with this right now. Our listeners and viewers blogs are basically saying that, you know what, we're seeing the prices go up. We're seeing interest rates stay high. So, you know what, you know what, they're getting closer to their credit limits and the banks aren't extending them more credit. And yeah, hey, whoa, hey, I'm starting to feel this overwhelming, you know, feeling due to financial issues. So, you know, what do you do when you're right there?
Well, you have to go through, and there's a lot of people choking on debt. You have to realize you're not the only person that's in debt, and there are a lot of folks that are in your exact situation that don't know what to do. You got to examine where you are and figure out a course out of this situation. People are getting choked out by the prices going up over the last couple of years. You know, although maybe their salaries raised a little bit, the increase in inflation far exceeded any amounts of money that they were given or earned to increase their pay. And then you got certain states taxing people at historic levels, and people are sitting there and they're like, what do? I can't make ends meet. The first thing is you got to back the truck up. You got to back up, figure out where you are, and chart a course. And that's what really comes down to doing a budget. Figure out how much income's coming in, figure out how much money is going out. Certainly at debt.com, if somebody reaches out to us, we're going to put them on the phone, or it could be done through the internet. But I personally like having a person talk live to go back and forth. And we are going to figure out how much money you have coming in a month. Then we're going to look at your budget. We're going to drill down on your expenses. Everybody has a tremendous amount of what I call fat in their budget. And certainly at debt.com, we're going to make those expenses. We're going to look at those and maybe make some suggestions how you can reduce those expenses. Then we're going to look at your debt, and we're going to drill down on who your creditors are, how much you owe them, what kind of interest rates are being charged. And we're going to compare it to what we can do for somebody and figure out what way to get out of debt. Steve, there's 5 ways to get out of debt in this world that I know of. One is do nothing. And if you have $15,000, $20,000 in debt, making minimum payments, you're going to pay them off for the next 35 years. You're not going to get out of debt. There's what I call the ostrich method, where you stick your head in the sand and you hope for good things to happen while you're buried underground. That's not reasonable either. And then there's a debt management plan where you come to a firm like debt.com and we go through and we do exactly what I'm saying. We're going to do your budget and we're going to figure out, okay, we can lower your payment. Maybe you have $20,000. You're supposed to be paying $1,500, $2,000 a month. We're going to lower your payments down to a reasonable amount. Maybe you're supposed to be paying $1,200 a month. We're going to make your payments down to a reasonable amount of maybe $500 or $600 a month. But my $600 a month is far better than you paying $1,000 or $1,200 to the credit card companies, because when you're doing the minimum payment game, Steve, all you're paying is interest. That's it. 75% of your payment is going to pay for the interest, and only 25% of your payment is going to pay the principal down. Now, you're a smart guy. You know that if you're only paying a few bucks towards your principal is going to be out there charging you that 20%, 25%, and even higher interest rates. In our plan, in our debt management plan, we're going to turn that on its head. We're going to say, okay, 25% of your payment is going towards interest. So you're paying half of your payments lowered by half.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's a little higher depending on the mix of creditors, but 25% of your payments going towards interest, and 75% of your payment is going towards principal, which is going to lower the time it's going to take to liquidate that debt to a 3 to 4 year period. And by the way, if you want to make more than a $500 payment, you can do that, and it's all going towards principal. Every dollar over what we tell you goes towards principal every month. And that way you'll get out of debt. The third way, or the fourth way to get out of debt.
Hold on a second, Howard. Here, we got to take a break. We're going to be right back with Howard and Saving with Steve here. So stick with us. We'll be right back, folks.
Thank you.
Okay, perfect. You're going at a perfect pace.
Okay.
We're rolling there.
If I'm talking too fast, just hit me in the head.
Good. We're good. No, I just had to stop because that's where our commercial is going to pop in here real quick.
Okay.
So, hey, Cameron, we're moving into segment 2 with Howard. So here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hey, welcome back to the Saving with Steve show, where we talk about the ins and outs of money, pretty much everything in the sun that relates to you having a healthier relationship with money. I do want to thank you for joining us and sharing us with your friends and family and associates. But you know what? I want to encourage you to check out our replays at savingwithsteve.us, because if you're in debt and you just hear this podcast, you want to come back and listen to it again, because Howard's given some jewels here, some aha moments. And a lot of people just didn't realize just a few seconds ago, he told you, hey, look, 75% of your payment for your credit cards go into interest, 25 to principal. And if you could turn that around, you could pay off that quicker and be out of debt. So you want to know those things. Now, if you're enjoying the stories here and information on Saving with Steve, I encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can never miss a show. Check out our few of our affiliates at UK Health Radio, BBS Radio, Talk Radio New York City, E360 TV, Las Vegas TV networks. All these networks are dedicated to empowering you to solve problems, uplift your spirit, and live a life of personal financial freedom. And again, Howard, I do want to thank you for joining us. And I just want to get into the third method here, because we already know about sticking your head in the sand, the ostrich method. And I love that because I'm going to remember that.
You can borrow it.
Okay, I'll borrow it. I'll have to pay a royalty there. But so let's go on to that third method there, Howard.
Actually, it's the fourth method.
Oh, sorry.
We already went through 3. First one is do nothing. Second one was ostrich. And the third is a debt management plan, which is a great program, by the way. The fourth method is a little more aggressive, where you stop making payments and you start to negotiate with your credit card issuers. And that's called a debt settlement plan. And a debt settlement plan is a little more aggressive, as I said, and a debt settlement plan essentially puts you on even footing with your creditors. Right now, if you're making your payments, they have no incentive to reduce your payments or give you a deal. If you stop making your payments, then all of a sudden they're like, you got to make your payments. And we're like, no, we're not making our payments. We only want to pay a percentage of your debt. And typically in a debt settlement plan, you're going to pay 50 cents on the dollar of what you owe. So if you owe $20,000, you're going to pay $10,000, but your monthly payment, instead of the $1,000 that they want, and instead of the $500 that the debt management would require, you're going to maybe pay $250 or $300 a month, which is lower, but it doesn't come without some scars. The scars are, you're going to get called. Your credit's going to get beat up pretty pretty bad. Your score is going to lower, and there is a strong chance you may get a lawsuit from one of your creditors. However, once you do, that's fine. That's part of the game. You're still saving a lot of money. Instead of 20,000, you're going to be paying maybe 10,000 for your debt. That's an option. It's not the only option, but it is an option. The last, and what I don't like to hear, because too often in our society we use the term bankruptcy, and this is the fifth way out of debt. And frankly, people use it too often. I'll just file bankruptcy. No, you're not, because depending on the amount of debt you have, it doesn't make sense a lot of the time. I hear people with $4,000, $5,000 worth of debt saying, I'm filing bankruptcy. Well, it's going to cost you more than that just to file bankruptcy. So that's not the brightest thing. But don't do it if you don't have to. This is the last method. And the reason why it's the last method, it's the most severe. Your credit's ruined. It's going to take you time to rebuild that credit. And for the next 3 to 5 years, you're going to pay a higher price on when you borrow. It's also may impact you on getting a job, and also even insurance, life insurance, homeowners insurance. They check to see if you have good credit or bad credit. And if you have bad credit, a lot of car insurance companies charge you more because of your bad credit. And frankly, I think it's kind of an excuse to charge you more, but they're saying that there is attribution. Somebody with bad credit also gets into lots of car accidents. Maybe because they're screening their calls from all these creditors that they owe. But the reality is, try not to file bankruptcy if you can. And the third, or the sixth, is marry well. That's my suggestion to get out of debt. But unfortunately, nobody's going to marry me to get me out of debt. Thank God I don't have any debt. But even when I was younger, nobody was getting me out. So those are my suggestions. And at debt.com, we're going to help guide you on a path to figuring out which is the best solution to get you out of debt for your particular individualized situation.
Well, first of all, I want to say thanks for sharing the information on debt settlement. You said that very nicely, because there's a few people who have come to our viewers line at viewers@savingwithsteve.us and just said, you know what, I just proposed this debt settlement, and it scared them about what was going on, because they didn't realize that if they had stopped making the payments, people would call.
Yeah. Well, listen, that is a situation. And, as a person in the later start, closer to the back nine of the golf course than the front nine, we were all taught we got to pay our bills and pay them on time, and you should never default. And sometimes a default is a good thing when you're so in debt, there's no way out. And the reality is, there's a place. Now, settlement should not be your first option. There's a lot of groups out there on the internet that say, oh, you got to go do settlement. In certain circumstances, yes. It's not the alternative. It's not the only solution. It may be the only solution they provide, but debt.com will help you make that decision. Debt management, debt settlement, or frankly, a lot of the times, not sometimes, a lot of the time, we just tell people, hey, increase your payment here, make more payment here, maybe transfer your debt around, and restructure it so you can get out of debt without taking any extreme measures.
Okay, so one of the big questions that I have is, since we're talking about this, is consolidation loans. Many people will say, hey, I've got $30,000 worth of credit card debt. They'll go to somebody, get a consolidation loan. What are the big issues, the ups, the positives, the negatives with that?
Well, listen, that's a great question, because it sounds great. I could put all my debt into one. But if you're turning around and putting them into one payment, there's an interest rate. And you got to make sure that the interest rate is less than what you're paying currently. The payments are less. But more importantly, what exactly are you signing up for? People turn around and say, "Oh, I'm going to refinance my house and put it into and take the money out and pay my credit cards." That's just dumb, because what happens is you got unsecured credit cards. So God forbid you get sick, you lose your job, you can always file bankruptcy and your credit cards for the most part get washed away. But if you put it in your house and you have this big old mortgage payment and you get sick or lose your job and you can't make that mortgage payment, they take your house. So that is not a smart thing to do, in my opinion. You should avoid that at all costs. But you have to be conservative and make sure that these deals, and I quote that, deals make a lot of sense financially. And sometimes you don't see it. So you probably want to consult somebody that actually knows what they're doing. There's lots of loans out there. And frankly, in my space, there's loans being offered at 26, 28% interest.
Wow.
And if you're paying 16, 17% interest on your credit cards, I'm not sure the extra 10% is a very good thing to do. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's not. It's just going to prolong your way to get out of debt. So you got to be careful about that.
So one of the 2 points that I'm hearing from this is, if you're going to do a consolidation loan, is it actually a better interest rate? Are you actually going to pay less over time? Or are you going to be actually be able to pay it? One. And then two, if you're consolidating debt through refinancing a house, what does it mean to you down the road? What if the issues were to happen? Because people do lose their job. I mean, we're in an uncertain world here. People do get sick. So if they're not able to pay that, and they refinance their house to cover all their debt, they're in trouble. So it's important to look down the road and see what's there, as opposed to, hey, I got the immediate taken care of. Is
Well, it's
that
also, Steve, you're taking unsecured debt and turning it into a secured debt. Plus, you're sucking equity out of your home that you built
Mhm.
up for years and years, which may impact your retirement down the road. Because what you don't want to do is have to retire owing debt, making payments when you have no income coming in. And that is a tragedy that I see with a lot of seniors. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when I started, you didn't have seniors retiring with debt. What seniors tended to do was get themselves into a little trouble trying to help their children out of debt, by paying off their debt or taking a loan. But the majority of the people retired without credit card debt and with either paid off homes or a very low mortgage balance. Now you're seeing people retiring with large credit card balances and large mortgages, and they don't have a chance or the income coming in to service that debt. So they're either having to do two things. One, they're either having to take more debt on to service the debt or use their retirement funds to liquidate their debt, thus choking them on reasonable income to reduce or liquidate their debts while trying to live a nice retirement. So it's
And that
very,
that
very
gets
challenging.
that gets very tough. Hey, folks, stick with us. We're going to be right back with more Howard Dvorkin, and Saving with Steve. Perfect. Okay.
Steve, you're really good, brother. You are good.
I'm just letting you talk because you're actually saying the things that everybody wants to hear. So
Well, I
it's not like I'm
appreciate that.
going, well, Bob's got this question or Bob's got that question. You've done this enough to know what you've done this enough to know. I'll just say that. So, and so, okay. So, one of the next things I'd like to do is I want to bring up the question of student debt,
Yes.
especially with people who are older and all that stuff. Is there a way to work with that? And if you do, and then I'd like to get into some of the myths. Where does it go? Credit scores. How does that, those type of things. So here we go. Cameron, we're moving into segment 3 with Howard Dvorkin. So here we go. Hey, welcome back to the Saving with Steve show, where we talk about the ins and outs of money. We're talking with Howard Dvorkin about debt, how to reduce it, how to eliminate the smart things to do, and the way to think about it if you're going through this. Now, one of the things I'd like to bring up is many of our listeners, Howard, they're asking about, they're 40, 45, 50, and they've got student debt. Is there anything they can do with that? And, a couple of the questions were, can you say goodbye to student debt?
Well, the answer is there's lots that can be done, but the
Perfect.
government does such a poor job of advertising or communicating what ability and tools that the consumers have to do this. And what you can do with government. Now I'm talking about government sponsored loans, because there's two types of student loans. One's government sponsored and the other is private. Let's focus on government sponsored or government student loans. And that is up to $2 trillion right now. That's a lot of money that's owed. And because of the payments that should have been made, but because of the pandemic, they stopped making payments. And then the last administration, unfortunately, delayed it. And then after 3 years said, oh yeah, you got to start making your payments now. And you found other uses for that money, thinking that, hey, I'm going to get the government to pay for my student loans. Well, guess what? The government's not paying for your student loans. And $80 billion right now, Steve, is in default of government student loans. And there's very, very harsh penalties. You're going to get you could get your wages garnished. You can get your tax refunds garnished. You could get Social Security garnished. So there are challenges right now. And as of July of 2025, you're going to start seeing a lot more aggressive behavior by the government to collect that $80 billion. That being said, you can go through and do a consolidation and reconsolidate or refinance your student loans to get you a lower payment, or better yet, you can also apply for debt forgiveness. If you work for a nonprofit, if you work for a hospital, if you work for a government agency, you can get forgiven after 10 years of continual employment. The problem is government didn't tell anybody that they have to register for this. And once you register, the clock starts ticking, not when you say, hey, I've been here 10 years and I want that free write-off. And that's not the way it works. So listen, I know I beat up the government a little too much, but they could do it and improve it. At debt.com, we try to help people get out of student debt. And essentially, we're able to go through and put them and do the work into a consolidation that will lower their payments, lower their interest. In fact, I have a bill on Capitol Hill that I authored or helped author. No, I authored it. That basically lowers the interest rate to 2%.
Oh, that would be wonderful.
Rather than the 8%, 9%, whatever that's being currently charged. If America wants to help people get out of student loan debt, instead of trying to waive interest or forget student loan forgiveness, which is probably one of the most unfair things I've ever seen come out of government, because you're having poor people subsidize the rich people who have college educations. That didn't make a whole lot of sense. Just lower the interest across the board. Everybody gets a chance at a college education. To me, that made a lot of sense, and that's why I promoted that legislation on Capitol Hill. That being said, people can get out of student loan debt, and they just need to figure out what their circumstances are, and certainly go to debt.com and go through, and we have a whole area on our website for student loan help. Private loans, let's talk about those. It's a much smaller segment of student loan debt. and they're not the nicest people, to be frank with you. They don't like to do anything to help you. That being said, there's a lot less tools they have to collect their money. So there's no garnishment automatically or anything like that. So you can negotiate with those folks too. In fact, I remember early on a very famous person out in Hollywood who I refused to name, had some student loans, and he was getting pressured to liquidate these student loans. And I was able to negotiate with his student loan lender for him to pay 50 cents on the dollar over a course of a couple of years. And it was a pretty big win. And obviously, 20 years later, I'm talking about it because, frankly, it was a great win. And he owed hundreds of thousands of dollars to this group. And they were like, okay, Howard, we'll do it. We'll take the deal. So,
Well, you know what? I actually have a number of people that have chimed in and they said, you know what? They they wished that they had some guidance about the degree they got and the university they went to, where they spent the multiple hundred thousands of dollars and ended up in a position where they made a fraction of what they thought they were going to make. And what is it? They're now still dealing with the student debt because they don't make enough. And understanding that if you were to refinance it with a private company as opposed to the federal government, you could have an opportunity for negotiation and actually paying less, like you did with the actor there.
you could, but that takes a lot of skill and you need somebody to help you do that. That being said, let's talk about what you just said. People who have gone to colleges for degrees that they can't make money at. And
Mhm.
yes, all degrees are great. College teaches you how to learn. It rarely teaches you a skill other than if you're in accounting, it familiarizes yourself. If you're in finance, maybe it gives you formulas you have to do or
Mhm.
the text to understand it, as opposed to a liberal arts degree, which I'm not criticizing. A lot of people do well with liberal arts education, but chances are they have to go for advanced degrees, which is even more money in order to teach them a skill. So it's very funny. I was on the stage a couple of weeks ago with a fella, and he doesn't believe in student loans. He doesn't believe in sending kids to college, and we went back and forth pretty good on stage, because I am a student. You know, I like college. I like education. I'm a big proponent for it. But if my kids wanted to go for something that I didn't really value, I would have a very difficult time. I mean, and also if you're going through and you are turning around and people want to travel and go to colleges, if you have a good, solid in-state university that is either free or next to free, go to that for your undergraduate instead of going across the country and staying, living and spending a lot of money, which out of state tuition is exuberant or enormous right now. Go
Mhm.
there, and then for your graduate degree, maybe you can travel, but don't spend a lot of money on degrees that probably aren't going to be very useful or provide you a substantial income to get out of the student loan debt.
I actually agree with that. Hey, folks, stick with us. We'll be right back with more Saving with Steve and Howard Dvorkin. Perfect. Let's see. What I'd like to do next is talk about um, credit scores, because that was something big with everybody. Make it real simple, and also how to spot financial red flags.
Okay.
Okay.
Red
And then,
flags as opposed to, give me an example.
um, well, it was one of the things. Oh, geez.
Getting into debt, if signs of getting into debt.
Yeah, let's go with that.
Okay,
Okay,
cool.
here's the signs. Hey, look, this is the signs that you're getting overwhelmed in debt, that type of thing.
Okay.
And then let's start talking about the credit scores, how they can be made simple. And then let's spend the last 4 or 5 minutes again on your service. Okay, and then we'll leave with how people can get in touch with you. Okay.
Great. Thank you so much, Steve.
No, this is perfect. Hey, Cameron, we're in segment 4, episode 239 with Howard Dvorkin. So here we go. Hey, welcome back to the Saving with Steve show where we talk about the ins and outs of money. We're here with Howard Dvorkin. He's been giving us pearls of wisdom if you're dealing with debt, how to get out of debt, student loan debt, all those type of things. But now we're going to talk a little bit about how to spot those financial red flags if you're getting into debt, and also credit scores. Many people are saying, hey, how do credit scores work? You know what? And Howard's got a way of making it really simple and actually talking to us about what really matters. So let's just start with the credit scores, Howard.
Okay, let's go.
So how do we make the credit scores, how to help people understand how to make it real simple for them, what they need to do to get a better credit score, what they can do with that?
Well, let's talk about what a credit score is first. I think that's a better education or a better way to go into what you could do to make it to improve your credit score. Credit score is it's a algorithm invented by the credit bureaus. Fair Isaac Company invented this algorithm, which takes in different characteristics. Part of it is how much debt do you have? How many times have you defaulted from the current debt you have? Are you current on the debt? How much income sometimes filters into that? Also, how many times recently have you pulled your credit in recent weeks, months, years in order to get more credit? So essentially, there's a whole bunch of characteristics that are used to build this algorithm. And there's two of them. There's actually the advantage or Vantage score or the FICO score, which a lot of people are very familiar with. And what it does is basically in an easy, simple way, tells the creditor, this guy's a good risk. This girl is a bad risk. It tells them without having to understand and be a nerd like me, what is actually on the person's credit and how do you decipher it by bringing it down to a score. And the score, 600, a score of 600, not so great. A score of 750, great. It's very good. A score of 700, okay. In the sixes is a little iffy, and people call me and say, I don't understand. I got a score of 625 and they won't give me debt. They won't extend me credit. And I'm like, that's because 625 is not a good credit score. So there's something underneath. And what you need to do to improve your credit score is very simple. First of all, I know this is going to come as a shock to you and your listeners. Pay your bills on time. That's the first thing.
I didn't have to be psychic to know that one.
Yeah, I know it's hard to conceptualize, but just pay your bills on time. That'll automatically improve your credit score. The second thing is don't take out a lot of debt. Try not to apply for debt. And because every time you apply for debt, it knocks your score down by 4 points. And don't let anybody else pull credit, let you apply for debt. I had a car dealer call me up and he goes, Howard, I have a client. They came in, we couldn't get them fitted for our conventional financing. So the car salesman turned around and put it with 50 different companies. Well, 50 different companies are knocking the score down 4 points. That's 200-point drop in your credit score. What can you do? And I'm like, I can't do a darn thing. You're done. And he's like, what do I do? I'm like, get your checkbook out because you're going to be writing a check to these people. So basically, we turn around, don't apply for a lot of credit. Also, review your report. You could get a free credit report on freecreditreport.com, and you could get that, or annualcreditreport.com, and you could get it for free every year. And it used to be quarterly, but I think they moved it back to a year. But you don't need to pull it quarterly. Pull your free credit report on an annual basis and maybe close some accounts that are dormant. I used to have an account with JCPenney. I haven't used it in years and years. I closed it out. I mean, essentially go through and look at accounts you don't use, because that available line hurts your credit score. So try to close those out. Also, go through and make sure it's accurate. If it shows late payments, your credit report, well, look at it and say, did I actually make a late payment? And if it's not, go contact that creditor and say, what are you guys reporting on this for? And there's things that people can do. They could dispute charges. And you don't have to pay a company. You could go to debt.com and certainly get the information. You could write a letter to the credit bureaus saying, I don't know what's going on. This shows and it's not accurate. And they have 30 days in which to investigate and get back to you. And that could be done over on your computer. So you don't actually have to write a letter. You could just log on to each credit bureau's website and go through and dispute some of the reportings, and do it over and over, and don't give up. And I just saved your clients thousands of dollars of hiring somebody like me to go through and clean up their credit. But the reality is they could do it themselves for free. And
So
just
Howard, here's one question. I want to ask it about a late payment.
yes.
What is an actual late payment?
Well,
I've got 300 people that says, what's an actual late payment?
that is a great question, because it's different with every creditor. Some creditors will allow you to make a late payment once or twice and not tag you. Some will hit you after 30 days. I have a friend of mine who's in the lending business, and if you're late with him, now he's a mortgage company, he sues you automatically.
Oh,
Sues
wow.
you. And it's like, wow, that's aggressive. He goes, yeah, I'm a real SOB. And you know what? He is an SOB. But the fact of the matter is, most large credit card issuers have different policies. If you're late once, they're not going to report you. If you're late twice, or you continue to be late, they're going to report that late payment.
So the late, like for example, if they give a 15-day grace, if you're after that 15 days, it's considered late.
Yeah, well, 15, 30, depends. However, you're going to probably be hit with a late charge on that you're going to have to pay. Sometimes you could dispute it. You can always say to the creditor, hey, I've been your customer for years and years. I've never paid late before. It must have gotten lost in the mail. I'll make the payment right now. And a lot of the times they'll waive that interest or that charge well, you get hit with not only a late payment charge, they also hit you with penalty interest as well. So you got to be careful on that. So you got to check that out, and don't be afraid to pick up the phone or send them an email to dispute the charges.
Howard, the last few minutes we have with you, I'd like you to just talk to our listeners and our viewers about what your service is, how it can help people, and if people want to reach out to you, how can they go about doing that?
The whole premise of debt.com is to help people get out of debt. A lot of the times it's giving them the tools that there's no formal education in this country for teaching people basic financial skills. That is our mantra, is to help people get out of debt. And our saying, and it's not just a tagline, is when life happens. And the reality is life happens to all of us, and we face certain challenges in our life. And a lot of the times people are unprepared to figure out financial challenges. And that's what debt.com is. It is a group of people that are committed to helping everyone get out of debt and hold their hand to do it and put them on the right path to get out of debt before they sit there and they get into this whirlpool and they end up swirling around in the waters that they don't understand how to navigate. Debt.com has been in business, and frankly, I've been doing this for 32 years, 3 decades. I think I know what I'm doing, and I think my people are the best in the business. And at the end of the day, our job is to get people out of debt, and we're going to tell you the path, the right path, which is to get out of debt. Sometimes it's educate yourself. Sometimes it's budgeting. Sometimes you need a little more. with a debt management plan. Sometimes it's a little more aggressive with a settlement plan. But let us help people get out of debt once and for all. And we're also going to try to teach you how never to get back into debt. And that's a thing that you always want to avoid. People come to us and we get them out of debt, and rarely do they ever get back into the debt. I always think it's because of my toxic personality, but I'm joking. I'm not that
I
bad.
know.
Other than to my family, ask them. But realistically, we're going to teach people along the way how not to make the same mistakes maybe they had to make before. And sometimes people get into debt by not paying attention. Sometimes they get into debt because of certain circumstances, and we understand that. The reason why they're in debt is not really the issue. It's how to chart a course out of debt. And debt.com is really, really good at getting people out of debt. And
So,
that's what we do.
Howard, so basically everybody just needs to go to debt.com if they're looking for your help.
Oh, I love that. I wish everybody did, but you know what? There's some fine organizations out there, but we're the best.
That works. That works. Hey, Howard, thank you so much for being with us today. We appreciate you sharing your information, your knowledge, your wisdom. Like even gave me a number of ahas, and if I got ahas, we got a lot of people with ahas.
Well, I'm
So
happy to communicate and happy to be on your show. And thank you so much. You're a very gracious host.
again, thanks for being here, folks. Stick with us. We'll be right back with more Saving with Steve. That's perfect, Howard. Thank you very, very much.
Steve, thanks so much. If you need us back, we're always around and available.
It likely will. This is going to get edited. It'll share. What it'll be? It'll air from Florida to California on a bunch of radio stations. 11 days from today on a Tuesday, and then about a week later, it goes through the BBS network, which is about 150. I don't know what syndicators you work with, and then it'll go overseas. Do you work with expats overseas that might have debt issues?
I sure, yes. The answer,
They're U.S. debt
is
issues
yes.
that they have. So the reason why I'm asking is because we have about 150,000 that are spread out throughout the world that listen to us in 6 or 7 time zones.
Nah, we deal with all people as long as they could get us a payment on a monthly basis and have an account here or wire the money to us. We can do that. We actually arrange for payments for them, and they wire money in and we wire it out to their creditors. So we're conduit for that. But certainly, you may want to look us up and hit us up right after Christmas, because that's a very good time for us, that we can help your viewership, because that's when the bills come due. And it was really, really great to have you as the host, and I thank you for allowing us to be on your show.
I appreciate it, Howard. We'll likely see you right after Christmas, because I have a list of, I've gotten to the point where I have certain people on at certain times of the year, and I think yours would be a great one. So I appreciate it.
You're a pleasure to deal with, Steve. Thanks so much for your help.
Hey, you have a good one. Just got to sign off now.
Have a great weekend. Thanks, man.
All right, bye. Hey folks, Steve Sexton here. Welcome back to the show. I want to do this real quick. Reality versus perception, the hidden threat to your retirement wealth. When people think about wealth, they picture balance sheets, accounting totals, investment accounts, real estate holdings, and so on. On paper, everything looks great, but what if I told you that the number on the page isn't telling you the whole story? What if the wealth you accumulate over decades isn't worth what you think it is? It's the illusion of growth. Let's talk about that. Most celebrated success story for the modern era is the S&P 500. Between 2008 and 2009, we had the crash, but since then, the S&P 500 is up 500%, and that's impressive, at least at first glance. But then there's what most people, and frankly, most advisors don't consider, is the S&P 500 is priced into the US dollar. And over that same time period, the dollar has quietly lost more than a third of its purchasing power. So while your portfolio might look bigger, it now buys less. This is the quiet force of inflation. And it's the most underestimated threat to financial security and retirement. Or more honest measure is gold. If you want to measure the true performance of the stock market, compare it not to dollars, but to gold, a monetary metal that can't be printed or manipulated by central banks. When priced in gold, the S&P tells a different story. Gold has actually gone nowhere for decades. Since 2021, stock prices in gold are actually down significantly. As of today, the S&P 500 in gold term is trading at levels not seen since 2013. In real terms, the market has given up years of progress, but most investors never notice because they're only looking at their gains through the lens of devaluated currency. Why this matters is for retirees. If you're in or near retirement, the truth is that more academic, it's personal because your standard of living is determined by the size of your portfolio. It's determined by what your portfolio can buy. $1 million IRA means a lot less groceries, healthcare, travel costs, 40% more than they did a decade ago. Inflation is not just a background of concerns. It's a primary force shaping your retirement future. Yet very few advisors have a strategy to protect against it. Instead, they continue to push traditional equity portfolios, often while recognizing the value of a dollar is devaluating and stagnating real returns. A shift in mindset from growth to preservation. When you're working and earning, you can afford to chase the growth. You're contributing to your account, riding out volatility, and hoping that times will do the heavy lifting. But once you retire, everything changes. You're no longer pouring fuel into the engine, you're coasting, which means you better make every mile count. That's why preservation, principal protection, tax efficiency, purchasing power preservations are at the heart of every planning approach. These strategies are not about chasing headlines. They're about safeguarding lifestyle, dignity, independence for the next 20, 30 years of your life. Okay, so folks, real worth isn't about the big numbers. It's about real value and what you can actually do with what you've saved. Folks, this is the time to start talking to your financial advisors about these things. What is the impact of inflation? How much do you have? How will you preserve things in that period of time? So folks, I just want to leave you with that thought. I want to thank you for joining us today. Howard Dvorkin, was wonderful to talk about debt, and we'll look forward to seeing with you next time right here on Saving with Steve. With that, I wish you all well. Bye-bye.